And we're live, as I used to
Hello.
say. Welcome to Simon no茶の間, Simon's living room, and welcome to my guest, all the way from a small studio, otherwise known as his living room in Tokyo.
Welcome to
Simon no you need to close that because I don't like the sound of my own voice.
I haven't done this before, so living room.
There we are.
Still working, right? You can hear me, right?
Yeah, I can hear you. It's much better though. I don't have to listen to myself. Okay. Yeah. Hello, Bernie. Hello, Robert. Hello, CC. Can I call you Karina? Frederick and Ty and Radri, if you're still there. And I'd like to introduce my guest, who will now introduce himself.
Oh, I wasn't prepared for that. Okay. I am Hiro, and I live in Tokyo, around Tokyo, and I'm a singer-songwriter, but also a composer. Mainly do, on one side with singer-songwriting, I do alternative punk rock with like orchestral kind of elements, and on the other side, I do orchestral video game type music for composition. So that's basically it, I guess.
Okay, well, it's quite a lot. On my normal working day, I shovel tons of sand and cement, but I mean, yeah, vids of your mom. Hello, yes, you got one day you're going to regret that YouTube name when when your children ask you, Daddy, what did you do on your YouTube? What's your channel name? Vids of your mom. Oh. Anyway, back to the question. Yes, we'll start with the. Let's get on with it and get into the questions. Now, you've told us you're a composer. You compose for video games, which we'll get into later, and also of your own music. But when did you first begin composing? Because you say you're a singer-songwriter as well. So was this prior to playing music and singing, or at the same time? Did it all happen simultaneously, or were you one day decide after you'd been playing for a while, oh, no, I want to try my own stuff, or did the writing come first, or did the music?
I actually started playing guitar, electric guitar in middle school, high school.
Mm-hmm.
And I had high school in Australia, Sydney, Australia, and I did music class and played guitar mostly. And when I graduated, I was not sure what I wanted to do, but I went into a music college to get a bachelor in music. And in enrolling, I auditioned for vocal instead of guitar. But then having auditioned for vocal and becoming a vocal major, I got into composition as well. So it's kind of like changing all the time. Although in high school I did try out composition, but it was kind of really new to me back then. And in university, it was just composition and vocals were my main two things. I wanted to do songwriting, but back then I wasn't very confident in writing things that you could sing to. Mm-hmm. So I ended up doing a lot of orchestral stuff for homework and assignments and things like that. And I merged the two in the recital for the graduation because for the final project, we needed to make a concert for ourselves, organizing everything, getting stagehands, doing all the run sheets and the scores and things. And so I implemented both sides by composing like an introduction for the concert, and then the rest of the concert is mainly seen. But from there, I kind of dropped music for a while because I didn't really think that. Well, I lived in Australia, Sydney, Australia, so there wasn't too much of a opportunity to use the music as a proper career. So I went into academic theology and philosophy and moved to Canada. And then 2 years ago, I moved here from Canada, and in order to continue doing music. And when I moved here, I wasn't sure what to do, so I started and just made my own CD independently as a singer-songwriter, and I was writing kind of alt-punk, alt-rock kind of stuff. And recently went back to composition. So I guess mainly I probably focus on composition and do singer-songwriter kind of activities on the side. I guess, or if it's like an equal balance of the two. That's basically.
So when you were in high school or middle school, and when you were being a musician, were you on stage? Did you were in a band and go on stage and kind of...
I guess plenty of times. I mean, high school, my school had a lot of choir kind of things. There were 2 choirs, one that was a small ensemble and one that was like a big choir. And every year they had a lot of different external kind of concerts and things that they brought us to. And like I also joined the state school singers, is what they call it. It's kind of like the choir for the state of New South Wales, which that's where I lived. And those kind of things. So I've performed at, with, I mean, not alone. I mean, that's a big thing, but at Sydney Opera House and things like that. I probably should silence that. Yep. Yeah. And then at university, I guess I just tried to do different things as much as I could. And, studying at a music college, they provide you different kind of opportunities, but I think not as much as I probably would have if I did music college in Canada or in Japan.
Oh, right. Right. So Australia is a bit of the backwoods in that respect.
I don't want to say that because
No, you'll never get back into Australia again.
I don't want to offend any other Australians that might be watching. But my school was private, so I guess.
So, right.
Yeah, they didn't mainly have too much of those. Yeah.
Okay. Now, I mean, you because I asked that question about whether you were in a band at middle school, and you explained you were in a choir, but you said that you composed, punk with orchestral elements. And my next question is, which punk and alternative bands influenced you, and were you a fan of? Was it early on while you were still at school, or has that developed? I can't think of many orchestral punk bands offhand, actually. That's
developed because even like I said, with music, vocals, and actually guitar, vocals, composition, songwriting. Same with my musical taste. Up until second year of university, I only listened to J-rock and J-pop and things like that. And so I kept performing like Japanese pop and rock at school, and people started to tell me that I have to do it in English so that people understand and things like that. So I did English songs, and so I was looking, and back then I was kind of just listening to normal kind of pop and that kind of stuff. But then I ended up majoring in musical theater. So that was kind of where it started. And with musical theater, my favorite is the Phantom of the Opera, which has elements of rock opera kind of style things. When I moved out of that, listened to a lot of Skillet, actually, if you know Skillet.
No.
So
anybody in the audience? Any of the audience know Skillet? I thought it was a cooking utensil, but it could be.
It is a cooking utensil.
But it's also a punk, an Australian punk band? No,
it's not actually punk. So it's alternative rock, and that's got symphonic elements and stuff. So if you imagine like Breaking Benjamin and that kind of stuff, or one or two songs, I guess, from actually no, Breaking Benjamin might be the best example of
I shall have to go and Google that, I'm afraid.
Yeah. Okay. But then from that, I guess I was looking for more kind of English music and stuff like that, and then I stumbled on like Panic at the Disco, and my favorite now is My Chemical Romance, which like I guess everyone had a phase of liking that in high school, but when I was in high school, I didn't actually follow the like whatever everyone else was liking because I was just listening to Japanese stuff, even though I was not in Japan, and I didn't have that kind of experience of being obsessed with it through high school, but then I found it recently, like a few years ago, and then got obsessed with it now. And that is kind of why I say alternative punk, because it's got punk elements, but it isn't really punk because it isn't like
it's not like hardcore punk, it's not like
and because like the main influence is actually the album The Black Parade, which has a lot of rock opera kind of esque things in it, some like dramatic theatrical kind of stuff mixed in with the punk elements and alt rock kind of stuff. It's all fused together, and so that's the best kind of explanation I can give to what I'm influenced by for the singer-songwriter aspect.
And that carries over into composition, or is is your composition work that is free? It's freelance composition. So I mean,
Yeah.
are you producing material of your own taste, or do you think, you know, I need to produce XYZ type material because that would appeal to this, that, or the other client, or do you just go ahead and do what you want?
Yeah, I mean, that's always the dilemma with a lot of artists is, do you write the music for the sake of the art or for your own sake? And the other option is, do you write so that you get money and stuff like that? Like, I personally think a lot about how society runs and the systems behind the society, and a lot of people don't really think about why there's such a pressure to appeal to audiences so that you get like sales and profits and things like that. And I feel like that takes a lot away from actually making the art. And you can see that very clearly in like video games, where if the company is run by like a CEO or businessmen who don't actually play games, but they just care about the money, then they know statistically what sells the best, but they're not going to prioritize making a great game. They're just going to prioritize what sells. And as a result, it takes away from the art. And it's the same thing with music. Like, you have people that try to balance the two and mix it together so that they can both have fun and create what they love and earn enough to live. But then most of the time, you're kind of stuck with trying to make music that appeals to people just for the money, which I mean, there is a place for that, I guess, for some people, like pop music and things like that on the charts. Like, it's relaxing and it's enjoyable if you have a like stressful day and things like that. But in the end, if you really look at the lyrics, it's kind of quite
bland.
It's often, but not always. But like, yeah. And so that's kind of because that's what people want. They just want to relax and listen to the music. They don't want to think about lyrics.
Audience, what do you think, audience? Do you audible wallpaper or music that gets you sort of thinking? What do you go for? I know him. Oh, you know all. Yes, hello all. Yeah. But so yeah, so you're stuck with this dilemma. But
well,
let me get to the next question. Could you describe the typical day of a freelance composer or musician? So how would you deal with it then in your typical day?
I mean, see, like for me, I'm still in a position where I guess I choose to do as much as I can for myself and to create like as much depth as possible. I try to focus on that. I don't want to like be the type of artist that ends up having to just appeal to whatever people like. I prefer to do what I like and make it deep and thought-provoking, and then the people that happen to like that would be people that are similar-minded, and that I would try to appeal to them, if that makes sense.
It does, as long as they've got money.
Yeah.
If you know, if you're trying to make a living from it, yes. Yeah. And speaking of deep, and you know, making your work you know, have more depth. You know, presumably throughout the day you're looking for sources, or do you write your material, or do you is it all up in here, or do you do research, or what when you're composing?
I think for me it's kind of just all whatever comes to mind. I mean, the way that I think, I'm really scatterbrained. Like I can't really. I'm not very eloquent because I don't stick to one topic. My brain is just thinking of a million things at the same time. And in that way, when I write a song, I tend to draw from like other people draw from personal experiences of events in their life, and they describe it, and then they kind of convey the theme from there. For me, it's kind of like I draw from the experiences of like thinking about. Maybe that's the same thing. I don't know, but like for example, like for example, I mean, one of the songs that I wrote for my EP is about kind of authoritarian control, and it kind of comes from my experience of like being raised in a situation. Don't want to offend anyone, but like a church kind of situation that was really conservative, and they kind of would guilt trip you to get you to do this or that and things like that. And so in the lyrics, I try to write about, you know, breaking free from that kind of cage of being controlled, to kind of stand up for yourself and not accept what they do to you, and to kind of expose kind of what their motives are, the fact that they're like wolves in sheep's clothing kind of thing. That's one example. And another song is kind of like it's more of a humanist kind of thing, where it's like I'm trying to write about how there's a lot of diversity in the world, that we should be kind to everyone and to unite together, and to be, you know, just we need to work together to really heal the world and things like that. So,
So basically, yes, that really answers my next question. To what extent does your interest in philosophy influence your musical composition? It does quite a lot, really.
Yeah. And I guess in a way it isn't so much like philosophy in that it's like, I'm not gonna, well, I might, but I'm not gonna write something like I take Plato's cave or something and then write a song about the cave or something. But I probably have that idea of people thinking that they know everything there is to know by looking at the shadows in the cave. But then until they come out of there and see the sun and come back into the cave, that they actually realize that it's not all there is to know. But then they get persecuted for that, that sort of thing. So these kind of ideas, and then how that manifests in life, is what I draw from to kind of write a song, I guess.
So this leads very nicely onto my next question.
I didn't intend to do that, though.
Yeah, no, but I mean, I was watching one of your videos. He does have videos. Check out his channel, by the way. I forgot to put it in links, but you know, it's just name your channel, and then people can go there if it's
well, right now, yeah, it's 0 to Hiro, and Hiro is Hiro. So yeah,
there you go. I mean, you can, but amongst those videos, you were discussing the fact that I think it was the gaming channel, because I was listening to anyway, there's another, he's got several. We'll go into that later, but you were saying that things like video games were being used as a vehicle for these kinds of ideas. But my question is, most people don't associate things like popular music or literature as being vehicles for philosophical ideas. On the whole, like you were saying before, it's you just want to come home, relax, and and not think about Plato's Republic. How would you seek to overcome this in your own work? I mean, you like you said, you wouldn't sort of with a sledgehammer make lyrics and references to the shadows on the wall of the cave.
Yeah.
But how would you then? I mean, without having to come up with a song in the next 30 seconds, how would you transfer those ideas into something that people would absorb through the music?
Yeah, I'm not really sure.
Your time starts now.
Don't time me. Pressure is, I'm not going to be able to answer it properly. I don't know if it's like, I think it's really difficult to get people to do this or that. You can't really change people like by doing something that easily. But I think that if we can recognize the problems in the systems in society and why people think the way they do, and address those things, then at least change the potential for change can come. And one of the things that I think needs to be addressed is there is an undervaluing of the arts in the modern society, and part of that, you can see that if sometimes people will make fun of people that have a liberal arts degree and say that doesn't get you a job, and that right there is kind of like a bias towards pragmatism, in that you assume that the only worth of a person is the extent to which they can afford to well, the extent to which they can earn an income. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean the economic worth.
Yeah. And I think the problem with the modern society is that there's so much capitalism that we have taken for granted, that we assume that that's how society is because we've been raised in it. We think there is no alternative, that we start to implement that in how we see people and how we see different aspects of culture. And one of those things that happen to suffer for that, through that, is art. A lot of the times we think that we appreciate art, but then at the same time we tend to pirate and download music, not really caring about whether the artist gets the money and things like that. You see, if you know any artists in your own life and they try to perform in a public space, sometimes they're asked to do it for the exposure instead of for the payment. And so that disconnect between seeing art as a proper and valuable job for society and as an aspect of entertainment only, I think that's a big thing that needs to be addressed in order to change that.
Yeah, conversely though, I mean, a lot of artists, I mean, certainly visual artists, I mean, I'm thinking back when I was an art student, and they were doing it for the art, and the entire commercial aspect of producing art and being paid for it, you know, was dirty. You know, you had to do it, you know, and and it was very nice if you were paid for it, but really no, you know, keep the capitalist hands off, you know, our art kind of thing. So yeah, there's kind of it's kind of what's the word? Help me, audience. What's the word? Yes, it's ironic. I'm not quite sure if that's quite the right word, but you know what I mean. I mean, I hope. Moving swiftly on, we'll go to decomposing composers. No, decomposing philosophers, because we were talking earlier. Because my next question is that whilst people don't associate art and music and so on so forth with philosophical ideas in general, more with entertainment, they're also not familiar with philosophers as a whole, and neither are we discovered in our talk earlier. So I should transfer to this picture, and here are some famous people who I'm heard of one or two of these, and they all have philosophy degrees. But my question was, most people have heard of some classical and more recent philosophers. You know, we were just chatting in the chat here with about Nietzsche and so forth. But ones from the 20th century and the 21st century even are pretty obscure and almost anonymous, which seems to be the case with their ideas too, and general philosophical ideas. Why do you think this is? Do you think it is because of society has become too pragmatic?
I don't know if I have a strong opinion or an informed opinion on this, but I think that it might be related to the fact that a lot of people don't value it, or at least maybe the previous generation might not have valued it as much as they could have to pass it on to the next generation. But like, we do philosophy whether we know it or not in everything that we do in life. And a lot of the ideas of people that are like 21st century philosophers are implemented without us knowing. So the fact that we don't know them, I think, speaks more to the undervaluing of things that don't actually generate typical kind of income. It's not like the businessmen or the CEOs, the Elon Musks and things like that, that are like venerated or studied as much as. You know,
yes, I mean that kind. I mean, yeah, you don't see philosophers turning up on America's Got Talent and that kind of thing. Oh no, this is my latest, thesis.
Because I guess because like with philosophy, it's kind of like thinking about thinking, and a lot of people are probably assume that it's like, why should we pay someone just to be thinking instead of actually doing or making something pragmatic or physical or a product or something innovative or something like that, not realizing that the process of learning how to think is actually really important for everything. Yeah, and I think that in training people in universities and stuff like that nowadays, there is less of an emphasis on teaching people how to think. So I guess maybe that goes hand in hand, but I'm not sure.
Yes, I would agree. I mean, you're taught at rather than taught to think. Certainly in general school, as a rule. Let's move on so I can put up this background because I like this background. There we go. There's my background. Because this relates to this question, which is, we've had music, we've had art, literature, as being possible vehicles for philosophy. But one of the things, especially on your gaming channel, that you talk about is philosophical themes and ideas appearing in video games. And again, I would argue that there's quite a big disconnect in the minds of most people between the medium of video games and philosophical concepts. So, I mean, we've more or less covered that ground in what we've just been talking about. But for you, because you compose music for video games, in the games that you play and those that you contribute to, how important a factor is the cultural, intellectual, philosophical element?
I think it really depends. Like I think there is a place for games that are competitive and multiplayer or might not have much of a story. Some people might need that, like that escapism is helpful for people that might be really stressed. I just personally like deep games with deep stories, philosophical themes and things like that. And that's kind of why, like, my favorite game is the Nier series, including Nier Automata, but also the original Nier, because it's really multi-layered in its depth.
I think, I mean, just to explain to the audience, this is this behind me here is the main character from Nier Automata game. It's an android, apparently. I did have, and I shall just transfer here, and hopefully this will play, and it will just give you a brief. I don't care about monetization, so I'm going to play this and be damned. But it's so that and I don't know whether the music will come through or the sound, but yes, here we are. There's the androids. And could you sort of, while this is going on, give us a synopsis, Hiro, of the game?
It's been quite a while, so like, even if it is my favorite, I don't remember a lot. But I did do a podcast on it with like Lost Link from Rescue the Princess. If you go to the game on my gaming channel, which if you search No More Zeros, it'll come up. And in that we go through the synopsis and things like that. But basically, we have apparently humanity sending androids to like Earth to fight machines. So it's very sci-fi. It's very like on the surface, it's very like action. You don't really think that it's going to be deep or anything. But then if you get into the game and they talk about different themes, the way that the humans, not the humans, the robots and the androids interact with each other or interact with the world and things like that, reflect different aspects of philosophical thinking. And the main driving force behind the whole game is actually the idea of is there meaning to life? And then it's like, there is no meaning to life, then how do we create meaning and things like that? So existentialism and that sort of thing is kind of the main theme, although other philosophical ideas are also portrayed by specific characters or in like sub kind of stories or things on the side, themes around, that revolve around the story. But I just don't want to spoil it as well, because I think it's one of those games that you kind of have to play and experience.
Yes, I mean, we won't go into too many details. I mean, because I want to play it as well. But yeah, I mean, what I did find though with the story, I mean, I don't know whether it's relevant to the philosophical aspect, but I mean, the story, you've got the androids, which are the more human-looking characters fighting against the robots. which are rather cute.
Yeah.
For some reason. And yes, it's a video game. Yes, it's entertainment, but it has these themes. But I just felt that this android behind us, very typical Japanese video game character type, anime-esque cute woman android, and all the androids in it seem to be cute guys and cute women.
Yeah, we had a discussion on this actually, and we were thinking about if it were more of a serious game, like would it be less of a Lolita kind of anime style kind of androids? But then we were thinking, well, Lost Link actually said that you would imagine that if humanity in the future were to create androids, they'd probably try to make them look. I mean, of course, they're going to make them functionally look good. But then on top of that, if they have the resources and the time, and if they had the years to develop the technology, they would probably resort to making them look like the way that they would expect or want them to look as ideals. So
yes, as an
it's
ideal
plausible.
version. Yeah.
But I guess that is a Japanese thing too, because like you look at Western video games and how they portray androids, and it's quite focused on realism, whereas I guess Japanese ones, maybe it's just the fact that it's very anime, but they tend to portray them as more anime-esque than realistic. But I don't know, just guessing there.
I mean, the thing I noticed when watching clips of the game is that, and the theme is that the androids are sent to fight the robots, and this goes on almost indefinitely. But they don't see it. They get damaged. I've seen. There's a scene where one pulls another's arm off and puts it on itself, and that kind of thing. But they don't get disfigured. they all stay sort of fairly clean and tidy.
Yeah, like they can get replaced. That's why. I mean, they are basically just. I mean, androids to chip.
But that's an interesting aspect of the gameplay as well, because if you save, it's like saving the all the sort of downloading all the details of the character that died, and then you can create a new one. And I think so. I mean, that's an aspect of the depth, sort of the gameplay depth. But do you think that do you think that they don't? Yeah, I mean, the gameplay is involved in it's like the fourth wall, and it's involved in the way you think about the game. But do you think that it brings players to think about these issues while they're doing it? Did you find? I mean, obviously, because you have your education brought you to, made you aware of these themes, and so that when you saw it in the video game, you recognized it. But for example, and if somebody who has not done philosophy or in any shape or form goes into a shop, buys this, puts it on, it would lead them to those sort of ideas and thoughts.
I think it has the potential to do so, especially because they explicitly kind of name random NPCs after like particular philosophers and stuff. There are characters named like Engels and Sartre and things like that, Kierkegaard and things like that are names of particular like robots in the game, like side characters, but they're there, and then they exhibit the and like they espouse and they kind of live that kind of philosophical ideal, and they show you what that means and things like that. And so in doing so, I think the way that this helps people to get interested in philosophy or has the potential to do so is the fact that it's there. They don't really tell you to go and pick up a book and read it, but it's kind of like you pick up the game, you might not be into philosophy at all, but then there is enough there to be enjoyable in that it's very anime and there's a lot of fighting and there is a very understandable story regardless of the philosophy. Because I mean, it's still going to be using the elements of existentialism is the main thing for this game. They're going to be kind of driving the story through that theme. And so that's one layer of appreciating it. But then if you understand a little bit of philosophy, you kind of appreciate another layer. And then the deeper you go, the more you appreciate it until you kind of appreciate it, knowing every single nuance and how to implement all these kind of things.
Have you come across a question from Radri here? I mean, related to that is that what games do you think have philosophy in them? I mean, one that you like, other than this one. Have you come across others that work in a similar way?
I mean, there are, and I have to think about it, but because this is the most kind of explicit, because they actually use the names of philosophers and things like that. But something similar to this was Detroit Become Human recently, in that they explore, I mean, human rights and what it means to be human, that kind of thing. And I saw it as kind of parallel to this, except that it's made, relating to the previous question, more accessible. So you got Detroit Become Human, where it's kind of questioning what makes a human. If a android has sentience, does that make a human, or is it the empathy that they express? Is that what makes a human? And things like that. And so they express it very in a way that's very easy to understand. And so it's kind of, you've got Detroit being easy to understand and accessible, so people get interested in the theme at a basic level, where they finish the game, they look at something deeper. Whereas Nier, it's kind of like you have that aspect of it, but then they have these kind of explicit mentions and these kind of NPCs and things that talk about those kind of themes on top of it. So it becomes a really deep kind of philosophical game, but it doesn't hold your hand. Like, you have to kind of research it yourself to actually understand where what the philosophies are. And I think that's two examples of like how games, these two games, express the same kind of similar ideas in different ways. Trying to think of other games. It's actually, it'd be easier if it, like, I think the fact that this is a live chat, it makes it really hard for me to actually
to come up. Yes, you can't go and make notes. Come back and say, but
I mean, like, sorry,
Roger was saying, any game with a story to me has a philosophy.
That's true too. That's true.
But I mean, one aspect that struck me was particularly with the Android games being human, and this game, and whether androids can be human. Just going on a sidetrack here. To a large extent, human experience is visceral. Eating, sleeping, drinking, excreting, feeling pain, feeling hunger, and all the other bits and bobs. Whereas an android, it can be programmed, and it can gain experience, knowledge, and so on from its surroundings, but it doesn't need to sleep, it doesn't need to excrete. And it doesn't need to breathe. It doesn't need to do, doesn't need to sort of live as such, as a living organism. So whether it could be truly human in that sense, I don't know.
But I guess that just addresses whether androids are a living organism as opposed to human, because I think the thing that these two games try to express is that free will is one of the main things that kind of define what it means to be human, and emotion, empathy, that sort of thing.
That's true. Do androids dream of electric sheep and all that business?
Because like, if you're a human and somehow you don't have to eat and don't have to, poop and stuff like that, I don't think that makes you less human. It makes you different, I guess. But I think, the essence of humanity might, at least in my opinion, like in alignment with these games, is probably more about free will and freedom and sort of thing. But that's just my opinion.
Oh dear, Bernie's feeling ignored and misunderstood. Why are you feeling ignored and misunderstood, Bernie?
It's really hard to keep track. Sorry, because the chat and I don't know how to work this thing yet.
Come back. It's actually, Bernie is probably an android and he's feeling very ignored and misunderstood. I don't know. In which case, and we're switching the topic up, Bernie. Don't worry. We're now moving on to Imaginary Machete Swinger, because it was through Imaginary Machete Swinger that I came to discover. Hello, Nightstar. Came to discover Hiro here, and I shall just have this as my background. Here is indeed Imaginary Machete Swinger, who was on the show a couple of times before. And you are part of their organization.
Yeah,
shall I say? Yes. So could you explain how you became involved with them?
So when I moved to Japan, I needed a singing teacher, so I looked for one and found my current teacher who lives nearby, and he happened to be best friends with Sogo, who came on last time, and also Charlie. So we went to an event, a live show with Charlie and Sogo performing there, and then at that event, I stayed behind and met with them because my teacher stayed behind, and we became friends. And just through the last 2 years, just working with them a little bit now and then. Like Charlie recently wanted to envision IMS being bigger, and so asked me to join. So I'm kind of helping out as one of the members of orchestrating and composing.
Yes, I mean you're I don't know whether it's finished yet, but you're currently working with Sogo on the anime cover project, aren't you?
Yeah. And I guess that's ongoing. Like anytime that they want to make an anime cover and things like that, I'd probably help out if they want something particularly orchestral style. Yeah.
So I mean, would you? I mean, I know that Sogo sometimes sort of sits stage right or stage left, and is busy with helping out in terms of producing the music that actually occurs on stage. Would you be involved in that sense, actually going with the band, or would you be more behind the scenes?
I think I can probably do whatever they need me to do, but I would probably, if I had to choose, I'd also be similar to Sogo, standing behind the scenes. That's kind of just where I feel most comfortable.
Yeah. Handing out your CDs while nobody's looking. Buy my stuff. So before becoming involved with Imaginary Machete Swinger, I mean, you mentioned about being in these sort of orchestras and stuff. Have you ever been in collaboration with other musicians or composers in Japan or elsewhere?
So I haven't really had the chance. A lot of my friends, like wherever I've lived, weren't so much like performing musicians, but doing it out of interest. And with them, I've helped them or played at different kind of things with them. In terms of collaboration, it's mainly just been hobby kind of things. Although recently, I did join a, like, if you know Material Collective in the US, based in Seattle, they do video game album covers of different things, and I've been one track of co-writing.
All right, so this is not an independent thing of yours making stuff for video games. It's you're working with this group in Seattle. Yeah. So you've got lots of things going on at once. Yeah. So the next question is because you lived in Australia and then you went to Canada and you studied in Canada and now you're in Japan. How long have you been here? 2 years ago? You came 2 years?
2 years, yeah.
Yeah. So, what things about Japan and Japanese society strike you the most in comparison to where you've lived before?
So I'm just speaking from personal experience. Like, it isn't like, don't take it as if it's objectively true. So like, don't hate a country.
Audience,
if I don't
be nice.
like it. Yeah. I did experience quite a lot of racism in Australia. In Sydney, and that is starting really heavy. Because of that, and growing up there, it's kind of like a really negative experience for me personally. But don't get me wrong, like it's a really good place for you to visit as a tourist. It's got, I think there are going to be a lot of friendly people there as well. So don't take my word for it. It's my experience. And so I moved up the chain of seeing society being really kind. I don't know how to explain it, but like I moved to Canada and something simple like people holding the door for you and stuff like that, like that a lot of people might take that for granted, but I thought that was really kind, and it's a really friendly society. The stereotypes I found to be true. Everyone apologizes all the time, where it's like in my experience growing up, it was kind of like you do something wrong and they criticize you for it and things like that. But that's just me. And in Canada, I moved to Japan, and in Japan it's even more so. It's kind of, I mean, I live in Tokyo, so compared to other parts of Japan, the other parts are going to be more friendly because it's a busy city and everyone's really busy. So there are different problems too. So in general, the society is really kind. They care for each other. If you like get hurt and things like that, it's natural in some other places. But people come and help you. If you need directions, you just ask anyone and they can help you. Although I think one thing that I want to mention is that a lot of people have rose-colored like glasses when they look at Japan because they just see anime or dramas and things like that, and have a mental image of Japan that's like almost perfect. But the society isn't perfect like any other country. There are different issues, especially I'm sure everyone knows this, but there are a lot of problems with the work culture being like overbearing. A lot of people having a lot of stress, suicide kind of level of things, and a lot of things could have been changed, but because of the culture behind it, change is really difficult. Because if like in the West, we see a problem, we kind of raise a voice with respect, and then people address it. People try to work something out. You can actually have a voice. You can say something. Whereas here, you try to say something, and depending on how rigid the company is, they might try to outcast you or to silence you in some way or another.
Give you lots of boring tasks and put you in a separate room until you go crazy and resign, kind of thing.
Yeah, and in that way, it kind of like depends on the company, but then it's really hard to change the problems that do happen, and every country has its problems. So that's what I found.
But on the whole, it's okay. You enjoy it.
I would rather live here than anywhere else still. So.
All right. Even in the Japanese summer.
Oh, okay. Well, that's a different story. The summers here are really hot because it's so humid. So I wouldn't recommend coming to Japan. At least maybe Tokyo in summer because it's really wet and hot.
Yeah. So you're happy living there, but you have a degree or something that you need to complete, and that's in Canada, I believe. So I mean, would you have to sort of like go back to Canada to do that? Can you?
In terms of having to go back, I don't have to go back. I mean, I'm currently still enrolled. It's a thesis, so I could do it by distance. But the problem is I had another negative experience with the thesis and the supervisor being really negative and controlling and things like that. So I lost a lot of motivation or kind of confidence to do it. And so I'm still enrolled. I don't know what to do. It's a waste if I don't do it. But like, I might finish it because I believe in the topic that I'm writing about. And yeah, but I mean, to answer the question, I don't have to go back to Canada.
No,
I don't mind it. I'd love to live there as well.
Yeah. It's not quite as warm in the summer. It does get quite warm, according to Robert. Sometimes it gets quite hot in Toronto. But you're in Vancouver, but it doesn't get so hot in Vancouver.
Well, it did when I lived there. I mean, it was the heat wave that came a few years ago.
Oh, right. Now,
so
let's go to YouTube. We're on YouTube. We've got a little bit of time left. Now, you've been uploading to your YouTube channel. It's quite new channels, and you've your gaming channel and this channel, your music channel. Do you feel it's a useful platform as a composer and musician in comparison to other, or do you think it's something that you're more or less obliged to do, or are you happy to do it? Do you think it's works well?
I think it really depends on the person, because the algorithms, it kind of amplifies and it kind of brings up the people that are already successful and already doing well, and the people that might have really good quality content that don't really know how to market and things like that, kind of don't get seen much. And so in that way, it has the potential to be really useful. It depends on the person who is using it. For me, though, I don't actually really care that much. I'm just making those two channels, one to use to link to things. If I like write a preview of a song and I put it on the website and stuff, on my website and stuff, just for people to hear it. I don't actually intend for it to be big or anything. And the gaming channel is kind of just for fun that I do with my friends, and because we want to have an outlet to kind of analyze video game stories and things like that. So I just put it up there. I don't intend it to be big. So I think it can be useful. Depends on the person. For me, as a super introvert as well, it kind of gets really difficult to have the confidence to post something, because I always like worry about whether
what the audience reaction, whether Bernie will go off in a huff. Yeah, I mean, I've been doing this now for 6 years, so and there's people who do it and have a burning desire to make, to get lots and lots and lots of as many subscribers as possible, to even try and make a living off it and push themselves, and then get all kind of desperate and angry and sad when that doesn't happen. So, but I mean, for me, it's just it's fun. I enjoy it, So I mean, a lot of the people in the audience have all done YouTube
cool.
at some point. If you're still there, Radri, and still doing it, like you say, it depends on what you want from it. If you're just doing it for like for me and for others who are doing it for their own amusement. But we enjoy. Thank you, Nightstar. Thank you. I'm enjoyed. That's good. Yes, and Radri is still there. Hooray! Yes, and we do it for fun. We enjoy doing it. So I think that would be the main. I wouldn't want to sort of push myself to do it. I mean, obviously, I asked that question obviously because you're a freelance composer and musician, and you need to get your stuff seen, despite the fact that you worry about whether people will like it or not.
Yeah, it's really a lot of unnecessary kind of worries and stuff that clashes.
Yeah, I mean, it's good to be concerned about the quality of your work. But at a certain point, you have to. Here we go. Here's the Disney reference. Let it go, and see what see what happens. And if you're lucky, people like it.
Yeah. But I do know that the people that are successful on it, who work really hard, I think that kind of way of earning income, that is the kind of the closest to what we discussed before, in that the people who want to be able to make money through making things they love, I think that this is one of the main avenues to do that, if you have the personality for it or the drive to do it. And even if you do have those things, you might still not get it. So it really is a hit and miss thing. But yeah, it's good and bad at the same time. That's what I think.
Now, we talked before. You mentioned before that you just went ahead and made your own CD, and in our pre-show discussions, you showed me how you'd actually made everything for it, including the designed the booklet that goes with the CD case, the cover, everything. Not only just composed it and recorded it, but done it from start to finish. Now that you're part of Imaginary Machete Swinger, would you be able to? I mean, you're working for them, but it's not so much an employer as a platform. Would you be able to sort of work with their specialist members to do you think, to produce a future CD?
I think like I enjoyed the experience of making everything myself, so I'd probably do it again. Although, like, I would probably use the resources that are available, and like with more people, it would be more fun to have different ideas and things like that if they want to help me and stuff like that. But I think if I don't have to create 100 or 200 CDs in one go, I probably enjoy doing it myself. But I probably would outsource the art or something like that, or like, cover art, things like that. Other than that, I'd probably do it myself.
Yeah, sort of including, sort of recording it and everything. Yeah, because I noticed on your latest Instagram that you're working on a composition for which you played the guitar yourself. And now my question is, in your own work as opposed to commissions, you probably more or less answered this by saying you would do everything yourself. Would you prefer to sing and have a band back you if you had the option, or would you prefer to create all the elements? Because now you told me before in our pre-show discussions that you sampled quite a lot of stuff, but this was you playing the guitar. But now you have perhaps an opportunity to have band members from, for example, IMS come and record those elements for you, or play, for the music. Would you consider that, or would you still prefer to do everything solo?
I think certainly there is if there is an opportunity to play with a band now and then I would definitely take it. Although I feel like
no, what I mean is, would you call on, you put in the guitar track, for example, and I mean, I don't know what it is you're composing, but you need a drum track. Yeah. Would you call on the drummer of IMS and say, hey, can you come or would you look for a sample?
Yeah, well, how like a lot of composition, not just me, but how it usually works is they would create everything themselves, every track, every instrument through the samples first. And then if they have a lot of money and they pay different musicians to play it for them and record it, then they replace those tracks. And so as a result, not being rich, not, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I kind of have to resort to samples. And the samples aren't like MIDI sounds, like beeps of the computer, but it might be difficult if you don't understand music kind of stuff. But it's actual instruments recorded as sounds. And so it sounds realistic enough, and if you manipulate it, it will sound like real instruments anyway. And so that's kind of all I can do in the beginning. And then in the future, then when I can have enough funds, then I'll replace as much as I can, is how I think everyone sort of does it anyway. Pretty sure that's the case. Yeah.
So yeah, for the foreseeable future, yes, it's still a solo project in that sense. Yeah. I've got a couple of minutes left. Let's just switch back to gaming. Now you work closely with Sogo-san, the other composer, but I've seen pictures of him on, supposedly busily working, and there is his bass player from the band, busily editing videos, and Sogo is just sat there with a game controller in the background. And my last question is: do you ever go online head to head in multiplayer against Sogo-san?
I'm actually too shy to play online because I don't know how to explain it. Just I mean, I'm doing this right now. I know I'm doing that, but like when I play video games and stuff like that, to be on like call. I mean, maybe it's an introvert thing again. But to be called and to be on call, it's kind of...
You don't have to use your real name, I mean, my son doesn't...
No, not real name. The fact that you're like talking to them real time and playing. On top of that, it's like the competitive kind of stuff. Don't want to embarrass myself if I suck, because I play mostly... When I play single player games, I play for the story, so I play on the easiest mode, and people will probably make fun of me for that, but that's kind of what I like. So I think if I did a multiplayer thing, I'd probably just suck at everything. So I don't actually play with Sogo, and I mean, what I've seen, a lot of what he plays is the mobile kind of...
I mean, he composes for that kind of stuff as well. Doki Doki something or other it was, I can't remember. Yeah. Toki. Yeah. I can't remember. Some kind of like a dating game for mobiles. Yes, you can't really go play head to head on that, really. So, I mean, what? Now we're more or less at the end of the show, but for people who want to sort of go to your channel, can we expect an upcoming video?
Well, right now on the gaming channel, I'm still editing the podcast we did on Detroit Become Human.
Mm-hmm.
On the music channel, I don't actually know what I'm going to add to it because, like I said, it's mainly just to like a semi-portfolio that I just link people to through other sites that I'm not actually. But if I write more songs and things that are my own, that isn't for someone else's project, I might upload it there sometimes. I might do covers. I've been doing recently. So that's not a guarantee, and there isn't a timeline, but they'll come now and then. But just, I think, to be aware, the channel is so small that there is no URL link for it, so you kind of have to search it quite. You have to look really deep to actually find it.
Yes, if you type it, if you go to YouTube, type in zero 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 to Hiro HIRO, and then put on the filter channels only, it should come up. If you type in Zero to Hiro and search everywhere, a whole bunch of stuff comes up completely unrelated. But if you filter it as channels, it will appear. And go and subscribe, everybody in the audience. You know.
And so the gaming one is No More Zeros as well. So that one is more video essays and stuff. And podcasts.
Yeah. Yes, and they're quite interesting if you're into games. Yes, I've checked them out. Well, I'd like to thank you very much, Hiro, for joining us this week on the channel. And despite the fact that somebody was saying, can't believe you're a shy guy because you've been on this show.
Yeah.
What's this subscribe thing? Says Radri. You do that at the start, don't you? Like, subscribe, comment, get it over with. I do it at the end.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, I mean, actually, if you go to the advert, or even the once this is uploaded, and I'll fiddle about with it on the in YouTube post production and stick on the links. Right. Okay. Well, thank you again, Hiro. You can go off and carry on composing, or gaming, because you.
One thing I probably should say is that my artist name is still not really set so much because, like, I'm working on different things. So right now, like, if you can probably find my CD at iTunes, Google Play, and if you search Hiro Akashi, AKASHI. But I might change that. It's just letting you know. And the easiest way to actually keep track, if you want to keep track of me, is probably finding my Instagram, which is Akashi, AKASHI.Tokyo. And maybe that YouTube channel, I might update it with a video saying where I am, what name I've changed it to. So just in case, because I'm really fluid. So yeah.
Okay. So yes, if you might find him, but you might have the next day, you might be somewhere else. So you have to be quick, audience. Subscribe now. Go to Instagram now. Thank you all for joining. And just quick announcement: next week, we're having another artist on the show. And this time it will be an actor, also from Japan, who's probably currently doing his side job in Shinjuku. But he will be joining us next week, and I have to think of questions for him. So look forward to seeing you all again next week. Thank you, Hiro, and thanks for joining, everybody. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.